Welcome to the Truth Serum on Carbonated.tv. This week marked the 10th anniversary of the opening of the notorious Guantanamo Bay prison. The occasion was marked with small protests by human rights activists and organizations. Despite promises by candidate Obama during his election campaign to shut the prison, it remains open even as his first term as a president draws to a close. And although Gitmo is just an old, forgotten news item in the minds of the majority of people, there is many an untold horror story still unraveling from the bowels of this notorious prison. In an article by Murat Kurnaz, the author of 5 Years of My Life, An Innocent Man in Guantanamo, he states that he was picked up from a public bus in Karachi, and we offer the following excerpts from his story recently featured in the New York Times. I left Guantanamo Bay much as I had arrived almost 5 years earlier, shackled hand to waist, waist to ankles, and ankles to a bolt on an airplane floor. My ears and eyes were goggled, my head hooded, and even though I was the only detainee on the flight this time, I was drugged and guarded by at least 10 soldiers. I later learned the United States paid a $3,000 bounty for me. I didn't know it at the time, but apparently the United States distributed thousands of flyers all over Afghanistan, promising that people who turned over Taliban or Al-Qaeda suspects would, in the words of one flyer, get, quote, enough money to take care of your family, your village, your tribe for the rest of your life. A great number of men wound up in Guantanamo as a result. He further relates a story about a prison in Kandahar. At one point, I was chained to the ceiling of a building and hung by my hands for days. A doctor sometimes checked if I was okay, then I would be strung up again. The pain was unbearable. In the same article, Murat states that his attorney, Mr. Azmi, made public a number of American and German intelligence documents from 2002 to 2004 that showed both countries suspected I was innocent. One of the documents said American military guards thought I was dangerous because I had prayed during the American national anthem. Lakhdar Boumediene, another ex-Guantanamo detainee, has also written about his experiences, and he spent 7 years of his life in the prison. He was an Algerian immigrant living in Bosnia and working at the Red Crescent when he was picked up on October 19, 2001. Lakhdar also shared his story in the New York Times recently and said that it was too difficult for him to talk about Guantanamo and his time there, but also used this statement, quote, I share my story because 171 men remain there. About 90 prisoners have been cleared for transfer out of Guantanamo. Some of them are from countries like Syria or China, where they would face torture if sent home, or Yemen, which the United States considers unstable. And so they sit as captives with no end in sight. Not because they're dangerous, not because they attacked America, but because the stigma of Guantanamo means they have no place to go, and America will not give a home to even one of them. A lawsuit was filed recently to force the US government to make public the videotapes of harsh interrogation carried out on a Saudi citizen who authorities once said was supposed to have been the 20th hijacker in the September 11 attacks. Lawyers for the Center of Constitutional Rights said the videos have been seen by the attorneys for Muhammad al-Qahtani, but cannot be shown to the public because they are classified. He remains at Guantanamo Bay, Cuba. The American public should now be permitted to see what occurred for itself, the lawsuit said. Releasing the videotapes and photographs of Mr. al-Qahtani's interrogations will serve the public interest by providing the American public with unique documentation of the systematic abuses at Guantanamo. The lawsuit in U.S. District Court in Manhattan said al-Qahtani from 2002 through 2003 was the victim of a deliberate and calculated interrogation strategy involving the repeated use of torture and other profoundly cruel, inhuman, and degrading treatment. It cited an FBI account that said the treatment was causing him to talk to non-existent people in his cell, and that he was hearing voices and would crouch in a corner covered with a sheet for hours on end. Outside of possibly housing 5 to 10 notorious prisoners, including Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, it is unclear as to what goals Gitmo has achieved in the last 10 years, other than bringing unwanted notoriety to this country. Moreover, who is going to be held answerable for the incessant and needless torture and the lifelong psychological damage and scars inflicted upon hundreds, if not thousands of prisoners who were held there without a cause? The curator of the torture policy in the Bush administration was John Yoo, who ironically is a professor of law at the prestigious Bolt Hall at UC Berkeley, of all places. It is an oxymoron, to say the least, that the very bastion of anti-war movements and pursuits of personal freedoms hosts on its faculty the curator of the notorious torture memos. These stories of torture and subjugation need to be remembered and told to future generations. And while the Bush administration can order the Abu Ghraib prison to be razed to the ground, and perhaps Gitmo may suffer the same fate, the haunting images, videos, horrific stories, and other pieces of evidence must be preserved and passed on. And while all of this seems like a nightmare from the past, it isn't. Gitmo is still open. President Obama has simply carried on Bush's notorious legacy and recently cemented his position by signing a controversial bill which will allow for military trials of United States citizens under suspicion of terrorism. It is little comfort that he signed it with, quote, serious reservations. Follow Carbonated Stories on our Facebook page or via our Twitter feed. And thank you for watching another mobile-ready episode of The Truth Serum.